Hello and welcome back to another radio roundup from the Sunday podcast. We're brought to you guys by sportshoes.com. As always, Matt, lots to come up on the show, right?
So much to talk about. I mean, Friday Night Under Lights was last week, that Glasgow meet, which Sports Shoes streamed as well. On Sunday, some great results come out of that. Keely's 51-4, Georgia Bell 157, Jack Higgins, big world cue for him. 35, and even, Walcott Nola running 401 as well. Tokyo Marathon was this weekend. I was at the opening of the Sports Shoes house yesterday as well, so that was very cool, down in Shoreditch. And I guess, we're here to talk about content versus competition as well. We have some fantastic guests in Lewis and Tom Folan coming on the show as well to talk about that. They actually film Jakob Ingebrigtsen, and they are the guys who operate Big Dog Media behind the star. So everything we have seen from Jakob is credit to those guys really and their vision of where they want to sort of take his channel as well. And we've got a few guests on to talk about the content space right now in our sport and the pressures around it as an elite and a sub-elite as well.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And you missed the big one, mate. You missed Matt Seddon's birthday bash on Saturday. That went down as well. You recovered yet, mate?
Oh, mate. Yeah, just. Mate, Sunday wasn't fun, Jesus. But it was a cracking night. So, had to celebrate my 30th the hard way.
There you go. Absolutely, mate. Let's start with a track, shall we? Let's stick to our roots, mate, and start with the track. Keely Hodgkinson, 51-4 over 400 meters, personal best. How much can we read into that, really? It was kind of my initial reaction to the race. I didn't really know what would be an insane run and what. Like, obviously, it's a PB, but they're technicalities, aren't they? When you don't really race that many, she does race a few, but
she does,
but not loads.
Mate, I just think it comes back to when she ran the world record, just how good she looked doing it. Just the form, nothing was breaking down. Didn't falter, and again in that 400, it was the same. I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, this is just an athlete at the top of the game. And there's actually not that much to talk about because it's just so good. Like, it's perfection. You just can't, you can't fault it. And, 51-4, I was on an indoor track as well, mate. I mean, I know Glasgow's fast, but, I was very impressed by that. She starts running 50-point. Outdoors, she's capable of something in that region. Then, the whole Femke Bowl debates, I mean, maybe they start to get wiped because Keely is, arguably, off a standing start, she's never going to be great either. She's losing a bit standing start, box start, right? She's always going to lose a bit in the blocks versus someone like Femke who's on the 400 her whole life. But you're starting to see Keely really, for me, shape up as, a world-class, people talk about her potentially doing 4x4s. She talks about potentially running 4x4s in the future as well. And I think, anytime you can run on, an Olympic 4x4 team or a World Championship 4x4 team, I think you're going to be tough to beat over 800 when you've got her endurance. And so, that
distance fans wise, like, we just love to see it as well, wouldn't we? Like, I've always wanted more 800 runners to kind of go that way, and Keely's at the level where she really could. Yeah,
I don't know if she'd want to. I don't think she's quite sort of at the level, but she could definitely feature on relay teams.
That's what I mean. Sorry, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's in feature on relay teams. Yeah. But it's hard to do. It's hard to get in the top four when, and like you say, you've got specialists in the event because they can't really select you off your split times. Like, whereas if they were selecting it off fly 400 meter split times, she's probably well up there. But like you say, they could probably only really select it on your personal best, which she's losing out to these specialists in that sense. But on an anchor leg where the pressure's on, probably not many better people in this country that you'd rather than Keely on your final leg in a 4x4, right? Particularly if she keeps chipping away at it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just her ability to move around the track as well. She was, she was challenged at 200 and did defend that position quite well, held the inside, and as soon as she had that, just didn't look back either. And that was against British champion in the 400. So yeah, very, very, very impressive from Keely, and kind of just reinforced that she's the world record holder for a reason. And I guess, when you run 154 indoors, you probably would expect her to be operating in that level over a 400. And again, like, she's going to go run 153, potentially quicker outdoors. Again, you expect her to be, you look at a lot of males, they can operate at 50 point, they can run 151, 152. So, but hey, look, there are a few other races there as well. George Hunter-Bell 157, completely fram ran that. I thought this is what I want to see more of, these meets. I know some of the fields were, I think, Bell's race was, I think, only 2 finishes, a couple DNFs in that one. I think it was just her and Katrina Bissett that finished that. That meet in Glasgow, I thought, was brilliant. It was literally 45 minutes long. You got all the best races within 45 minutes. It just bang, 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 bang. Race would finish, next race on the track. It's exactly what you want. It was produced well. Obviously, there was a live stream. It was on Sports News. It was brilliant. And they took it up last minute and got it out on their website. And I just thought, and the fields as well. And in the UK, this is what we need more of. We need more of these races where we just bring a few key athletes together. I think if more people had known about this, or it had been a bit earlier in the indoor season, the fields would have been deeper, but you might not have had the stars like Keely and George Hunter-Bell, because they would have had, sort of European interest on the world tour. But I just hope we can see a few more of those meets, the way it was designed. I appreciate it's good to account for the masses as well. And it's good to have, 8 1500s, but there was something about it just being like, literally, I've got half an hour, 40 minutes of primetime racing. Go see Jack Higgins run a world qualifying time. Go see Rivet and Wallace and get their cue.
Even if you want to make a mass participation race, I've never really understood why and they do it very occasionally. Say like the BMC, right? You could have races all day, and then you can have 40 minutes at the end of the day where you have the A race for 8, 15, 5K men and women. Yeah. Bang, bang, bang. And then you just maximize like viewers on the stream or in person.
Excitement. Yeah, in person. Yeah.
And then people who have come throughout the day, if you got the kids' races first thing, whatever it is, they might stick around because they're like, I've got a free ticket here essentially to watch some of the best in the country.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
So on the topic of content, I just thought it was quite it was good viewing. It was easy viewing. It was good viewing. You kind of knew everyone in the races, and that's partly because M11 were there, right? But one thing I want to just bring up, mate, is obviously Keely's been whispering around this male pacemakers. Was it last week or the week before? Sort of conversations are starting to be had around that. Do you see that as a problem on the track? I mean, it's already happening on the roads. I kind of just think it's a means to an end. It will happen.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I think it depends how important times are to the sport.
Personally, I think if Keely's going for...
If we just want to see everyone run really quick, then let's just have loads of Kipchoge Breaking 2 style races and just do whatever we can. Or not do it at all. I think this is the issue. Yeah.
It's tricky on the track. Because I think past world records, attacking the world records...
You can't wipe an old record book by making it easy. And I know like things change, like the tracks change and the training changes and the shoes change, but they are within certain rules.
Yeah, that would be a conscious advantage that Keely would have over those who went before her.
Well, look at Rudisha, right? He's best in the world. He's done it in an Olympic final after some rounds. No pacer. Highest pressure moment ever.
Personally, I think that with the 800, that's what you need. I actually feel like the 800 is the one record you can. I mean, the 400 is the same, right? You don't have pacemakers in the 400, and the 800 is similar to that event. I think you get it right. The weather's good in 800. You can front run the hell out of that world record. Like it's not, you actually don't need a pacemaker in an 800. I personally think when you're on, you're on. Like look at what Keely's produced at major championships as well. Rudisha, other world records, Kipkeita's world record indoors, major championships. Lots of records come at the major championships. And I feel like it's
the trust you have to have in a pacemaker, right? Because like the amount of times you see a pacemaker on say the Diamond League circuit, run, I don't know, a 22 first 200 and then shut it down so that it looks like they've run the exact right 400 meter split. But the way they've run it is horrible. So that's not helpful either. So then they end up running deeper and then catching up, and wave light's almost just as good. Like there's a minimal drafting effect. It's not like cycling though, is it? And I don't know, someone may be writing and correct me on that if I'm completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's not as strong as it potentially people make out in terms of drafting.
No, it's not. And if you're Keely, I'm not sure why you would ever want one, because you know what people are going to say. Like people are going to just be like, she broke the world record, but she had a male pacemaker. And that will be the storyline. And it's a bit like when Kipyegon tried to go sub-4, the storyline was just like, those pacemakers were wacky. Like, I just don't think that drafting works as well on the track as it does on the road at all. Full stop. But maybe the scientists will say different. And again, that took the shine off of what Kipyegon was actually doing. And I think if you're a female and you're setting records or you're winning races, you don't want any distractions.
Yeah.
On that. So there's an interesting debate, mate. I just thought we'd touch on Tokyo Marathon as well. 30 men sub 2:10. This is for me becoming the fastest marathon major. I think there are slightly slower courses out there. Tokyo is a very, very fast course, but also it's the depth, which really appeals. That's equal to Valencia. I think Valencia had 32 sub 2:10 this year, and it's only getting deeper and deeper is the Tokyo Marathon. You've got Segura Saku who's down in like 12th, running 2:06. And look, all I'm going to say, if you're Britain, London is amazing, but we've always said if you're trying to run 2:5, 2:6, it's an extremely difficult place to go and do that. And this year's looking deeper than ever. But I do look at the Tokyo Marathon. I think this is, the weather in March in Tokyo is just absolutely excellent. And it's clearly becoming the best or the fastest, deepest marathon major out there.
Yeah, I guess just the one issue for Europeans is you can't just drop in for the race like you can with Valencia.
So difficult.
It's going to be an expensive trip because not just because you have to get over there, but you're going to have to go, you're going to have to acclimatize.
Time zone's horrendous.
Time difference, yeah, and all that stuff. And I think it just, unless you're like elite of the elite and you can really say, no, this is the goal race, it's going to be really hard. Whereas I think that's what's so good. Valencia is so accessible to Brits. But yeah, just before we get a guest on, mate, a couple more results to wrap up. Obviously, Jack Higgins, 3:35, gets his world qualifying time for the win as well. Top performance from him. And obviously, after speaking to Mark, who he kind of said it was going to be a bit of a long shot or was going to be quite tough. But the guy's come through and done it.
To be honest, though, it's just, it shows you, and we talk about these races that perhaps someone like Higgins is denied of throughout the season. Even when I spoke to him, they go over to Iceland, the race doesn't line up, they're racing Lee Valley mile races and then it's British champs, and they just didn't have the opportunity to get them in Glasgow, get them with wave lights. Couple pacemakers. Jack had his brother and another pacemaker out front as well. And it was difficult. Had McMurray on his shoulder the whole way, but still just had enough to outmuscle McMurray and squeeze under that 3:36 qualifying time. And I actually thought 3:35 indoors, what does that equate to? I think Higgins has a good style for indoors. He's not as bouncy as some, so I think he works through the boards a little bit better. But, you're starting to show form of being able to go run 3:33 or something outdoors. And I think he needed that in order to get in those 3:33 races outdoors. But he's done a good job, and it's been a fantastic season.
Do you think there's an element as well that because the race is in March, that I don't know. I know it's only just March. It was what, 1st of March or no? Sorry, was it?
No, it's 1st of March.
1st of March, yeah. Do you think there's an element that you're just fitter than a lot of these usual indoor races where you're like cramming them in January before British champs?
Yeah, he's had a season. He's had 4 or 5
get a proper season when you have a meet here.
Yeah. He's had 4 or 5 1500. But I looked at that Glasgow meet on the weekend and I thought this. We moan about sometimes lack of opportunities for Brits. That meet could be the one going forward. It attracted M11. We attract a few more international stars. This could be, they could have a 5K on there, no problem. Tom Keane blistered round a 3K up there. That track is one of the fastest tracks in the world indoors. We saw that at the World Indoors. We need to have some 5Ks indoors up there, and we need to get some really good fields together, 5Ks, 3Ks, etc. And the date, look, that can be decided by the athletes themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Friday night under the lights, Charlie Wheeler and Izzy Fry taking the wins on the men's and women's side, respectively. Nice runs from them two, but I think we're just waiting to see what they can both do on the track, really.
Yeah, Wheeler was in 2 minds whether to go race Bath. He's obviously, got that half marathon queue. But yeah, he did openly say that Boston was disappointed for him. He wanted to attack that European standard of 13:08. Couldn't quite get hold of it. And so kind of he was coming back to Battersea just to basically just have another hit out and see if he felt better than Boston. And he had to work hard for it. So I don't know if he did feel much better than Boston, to be fair. But he is going through an adjustment period. Difficult coming off a half marathon like that down to the 5K. But good to hear that he is trying to attack that European standard of 13:08. And Izzy was just supreme. And yeah, she's she actively wants to go for the 10,000 in the summer, really compete there. And she's looking at, Megan Keith, of course, but, she's looking in a very good spot to do that.
Yeah, it certainly is. 15:21 on the night. Look, Bath Half coming up, the trials for those World Half Marathon champs. Someone who is running Bath Half next weekend, Cole Gibbens. But the question is he a runner? Is he an elite? Is he an influencer? We will ask the man himself, because that is this week's debate. Cole, we were just chatting, right? Welcome to the podcast. We're just chatting. Are you an influencer? Are you a runner? Are you an elite runner? Are you a sub-elite runner? Where does your title lie currently, mate?
Well, I don't know. I'm probably about 10% of all of those things. I was having a debate, actually, funny enough, yesterday with Hugo Fry, like very, very big at the moment in the kind of influencing game. And he was saying that I seem to dodge a lot of the hate in the content creation game because I'm much more like content creation side than influencer. Yeah. And I think it's more the style of the content that you deliver that basically decides whether you're more content creation or influencer. For me, it's training is always coming first. I'd sometimes decide to document a lot of it, but also if it's going to jeopardize the quality of the session, then I won't. And yeah, my running will always come before any sort of brand deal, any sort of content, anything like that, basically. So yeah, just happen to document my training. So I definitely sit more on the content creation side for me, really.
Yeah, Cole, we've got to ask just off the bat, why did you start a YouTube channel?
There's probably some sort of childhood trauma in there with needing to be noticed, probably, I would imagine. But ultimately, it's because the content that I consumed the most was running YouTube content. There's a couple that I specifically watched when I first started. And I was like, I really enjoy consuming this content, so I want to create this content. So that's pretty much it, really.
Do you still consume high levels of YouTube content now you have your own channel?
Yeah, I basically watch pretty much all of the content creators in the space, even the ones that I don't like so much, and it's more hate watching because I just think there's something to learn, whether it's from a content creation side, maybe learning something about the editing or the way they told the story, or if it is literally just watching it because I want to see what session they're doing or what nutrition they're having on their training day. Yeah, there's loads of different reasons I watch, but I'm always consuming running related content. Yeah.
I guess you mentioned a bit at the start, have the goals changed with the content creation as your running's improved? Because obviously when you started, like decent runner, but you're getting to the point now where you're racing in Bath Half next weekend, you're appearing on your elite list. Have the priorities changed at all around that content versus training decision making?
I'd say the content has changed, definitely. Now I won't release a video unless it's up to a certain standard. Whereas when I first started creating content, it was just about getting the content out and I didn't really care how it was edited. Whereas now I'll delay a video a week if it's not edited properly. I want it to be a certain standard. And I wish I'd kind of locked into that kind of earlier, because it's my work, right? It's a representation of me. So I should have been a little bit more up to standard with things like the editing. But no, as I mentioned, if, say, for example, the filming was going to get in the way of my Bath Half performance, then I wouldn't be doing it. But I've done it for so long now that it does become part of your routine. And especially if you've got someone else to help, for example, my girlfriend, she does a lot of the videoing now that she's kind of come on board with that sort of thing. So it actually takes a lot of the stress away. And it's more, I've become a little bit more of a director on say like race day rather than a videographer. It's more just like, oh, can you get a shot of this? Oh, I'm going to go do some strides. Can you film me doing it? That sort of thing. So it actually becomes quite easy, and it's the editing, which you can do behind the scenes, that is the complicated bit. Once you can get past the having a camera in your face and getting some weird looks when you've got a camera and you're talking to a camera, but you get used to that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it's becoming a whole operation. How many hours a week do you spend? I mean, it might not be the same every week, but how many hours a week are you spending on YouTube at the moment? Alongside your full-time job, Carl.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do it without the support of my partner. But yeah, I'd say I do between 30 and 40 hours of work per week. I then do my 18 hours of training, and I probably spend somewhere between 5 and 10 hours on YouTube or content as a whole. It depends on the style of video, or say, for example, my London Marathon video, I'll probably put a little bit more effort into that one than your standard one. But yeah, I'm pretty much from 9 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. at night, just go. I'm doing something running related or work related.
Cole, as you've developed, have you grown in this space? Have you felt the pressure? Because there is an element of where those who do really well on social media are coincidentally those who give people the most access as well. And then that mental health starts to take a hit. The more access you give people into your life, you just can't help but generate more pressure for yourself. I can imagine that being quite difficult. Have you ever felt that pressure just get too much?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to find a balance between what you share and what you don't share. And I've always gone on the end of a bit more transparency and tried to show everything, not just the good results. But there is pressure. And I think especially in the second half of last year where I started to have some bad results, it's because suddenly I was running to impress people online, not to impress me. It became more of an extrinsic motivator than running for myself or running for my PBs, which I've done basically the rest of my running career. It was always running for me. And then when it started to become a little bit more like, oh, I don't really want to do this race, but I'm going to do it for the content, that's when actually I saw that the performances drop off a cliff. So now I've gone back to going, no, I'm just going to do the races that I want to do, the ones that I know I'm going to get the best out of myself, and just happen to film those rather than doing a race for filming it. So yeah, it is a tricky balance, but I think I've navigated through it, and now I've learned what to film, what not to film, what to share, what not to share. And especially with the stress fracture gate that was on social media not too long ago, where everyone was giving their 2 pence on what you should be advising people online and what you shouldn't. I think it's better sometimes just to stay quiet.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and at the start you mentioned, I guess, this debate between content creation and being an influencer. Could you just talk a bit around what that's like to be involved in, to be in part of those discussions? And then I guess we can talk about some of, like you mentioned, some of the recent stuff in the media.
I mean, it is cool to be part of these kind of communities, and in the nicest way possible. If I didn't create content, like people like yourselves probably would have never heard of me, because I'm a good runner, but I'm no world beater. Like there's no household name, So content has given me access to a lot of friends, a bigger community. I can go for a run and someone be like, "Hey, Cole running, like nice to meet you. Love the content," and that gives me a little boost. So it's given me a lot back from that regard. But it is when you get into these spaces, say for example, if you go to like an event, which you guys have probably like been to yourselves, they can become a little bit cringy, and I think that's where trying to decide which side of influencer or content creator you sit on. So they're really, really cool spaces, but they also can be very tiring. I did a few before London Marathon last year, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that again, just because it's you've got to be 10 out of 10 energy the whole time. You can't really go to a quiet corner. These sort of influencer content creation spaces, always someone's got a camera out, whether it's on you or you're just in the background. So they're quite intense. And the people that do create content and do influence are quite intense people. So in the best way possible, they're lovely people most of the time. But yeah.
Yeah, Cole, it sounds like you've struck a good balance. Do you feel like elites can replicate what you're doing, or is it too difficult for elites to get into this content space?
It's such a tricky question, because there are some elites that absolutely smash the content. Like I absolutely love like Phil Sessman, Alex Yee's content. But I think when you've got like a production team doing it for you, that it can be really easily portrayed. They've got obviously like friends or videographers helping with them doing that. But there are some elite athletes that I've seen where you can tell they're doing it themselves. And I think they struggle with the whole, like, just as I did, like the whole filming yourself, trying to get personality across. And also you can like quite cringe yourself out quite easily when it's just you and a camera and you're trying to get some sort of personality across, like maybe telling a joke when there's no one else there, no one's going to laugh. So getting personality across can be difficult, and that took me a little while. So if you're a professional athlete and you're trying to focus much more on your training, your recovery, your nutrition, and now suddenly you're adding in, you've got to film and get some sort of energy across to the camera, that can be quite difficult. I think for me personally, that's the content I love to consume, is the elite end of the sport. I love that, whether they've got personality or not, because I'm just trying to learn. But I know that a majority of the running world want content that is fun, relaxed, personality. They're not really worried about fast times. So actually some of the biggest content creators are less about the elite end of the sport. So I think it's just finding your niche, really.
Cole, are you worried that the YouTube space is becoming rather saturated? And you talk about the elites. I'm obviously a big fan of watching those elites as well, but those videos are becoming a little bit repetitive. They're becoming the same videos, and actually I feel like we're given less as well. Like those sorts of splits, those details are becoming less and less in these high end videos, the likes of Cole Hocker and stuff. You never see actually what these guys are doing, so it is becoming quite repetitive.
Yeah, it's become quite repetitive, and just kind of touching in on what you said there about the YouTube market being quite saturated. I personally have always taken the viewpoint that kind of high tide raises all boats. So if we're all making better content, it will make me make better content. And also because I love consuming the content, the more out there, the more I'm learning personally. I think I would struggle from a content creation point of view if I'd only just started my channel. I think trying to start now would be extremely difficult because of how saturated the market is. I was quite lucky that I got into it just before there was like a big boom of running content creators happening. So as much as I'm still quite a small creator, I've got just enough that I can get like 10,000 views on a video quite regularly. And whereas if I was starting now, I don't know if I've got it in me to, I guess, be noticed within all of that noise. But for me personally, I love seeing those repetitive videos. I'm happy to watch, I know, Sam Ruth just run around a track. That doesn't bother me at all. I just love watching these elites do their thing. But from the other kind of side of things, yeah, I can completely understand why a lot of the majority of hobby joggers, if you want to call them that, maybe don't want to consume that 24/7 because it does get repetitive. And I can see that for sure.
And just on, I guess, what maybe the mainstream media can learn from content creation, because I think we've seen, rightly or wrongly, some integrations within sports like football where we've started to embrace that more content creation side of things and to make some of the traditional broadcasts a bit more personal. How can we do that in running? Because the content that comes out of a race, for example, is way off what we'd get for someone's YouTube video. But that's the mainstream that we're putting out, and we're trying to attract fans that way.
Yeah, it's so tricky, isn't it? Because I mean, for example, the World Cross Country Championships, they got quite a lot of backlash from the quality of the stream, right? I think it is because we've got used to watching these high production quality, super polished videos. So I think just maybe realizing that they are separate things is really important, and actually putting together a live piece of sport, especially running when we can be spread out across a massive field, is extremely difficult, right? And I think then just appreciating when a stream has done it really, really well. For example, I saw the R-Mile 5K got quite a lot of backlash on their YouTube video for changing the way that they filmed the race. I personally enjoyed it. I like to still listen to the commentary. In my head, I was thinking, this is free content. Why would I moan about this? And I think some people need to remember that a lot of the content they're consuming is free, and maybe be a little bit less entitled. But ultimately, obviously, we want to watch sport and we want to watch our sport being given the kind of the praise it deserves. We want it to be shown in its best light, so anyone else getting into the sport can access it and be like, oh, this is running, this is so cool. A bit like Night of the 10Ks, we want all sports to come across like that, right? All areas of our sport to come across like that. Yeah, it's so tricky. From the content creation side of things, I've seen how hard it is to put together something that's interesting and polished like that. But on the flip side, a lot of this content is free. If you're paying for it, it's different, but especially the YouTube stuff is free. So I think I don't know, if you don't like it, don't watch it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we wrap up then, Cole, what are your kind of hopes for next weekend in Bath?
I just want to be in the mix. I don't really know where the fitness is at, to be honest. I've always been a little bit more towards the half to marathon sort of distances in terms of getting the best out of myself. I'd love to go sub 64. That'd be great, but it's just more of it's going to be a great learning experience for me, just being on the start line with those top names, seeing what they do, how they prepare for the race. Always trying to learn. Yeah, have a good time. Hopefully run quick, but you know, I'm more than just a runner, I suppose. As long as I can have a great weekend with the missus as well, it'll be a great weekend.
Yeah. Ideal, mate. Right. Wishing you all the best. Thanks so much for chatting to us this morning. I'm going to catch you soon.
No problem. Take care.
Cheers, Cole. Bye-bye. There you have it. Cole Gibbens on content creation versus influencing, I guess. And I think it's quite a nice way he described that, a kind of distinction. And I think it's what we appreciate, right? We appreciate runners just sharing what they do in their daily lives rather than trying to influence what other people are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, we'll talk to Lewis and Tom about it as well, but there's just so many challenges, I think, mentally, that sort of back and forth in your head when you are creating this content. And, Cole shared upon it then as well. You sometimes make the wrong decisions, and you do things for all the wrong reasons. And, I guess the consequences for him aren't as, well, they are still big consequences, but perhaps not as great as it would be if an elite sort of was making decisions off the back of content as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, like take Jakob, for example. Obviously, like you say, we're going to chat to Big Dog Media, and with him, everything he puts out gets scrutinized. Like, we'll sit on a podcast and we'll be like, oh, did you see that Jakob clip? Which could be 8 seconds from a video that's gone out. And we'll chat about that and talk about what that might mean for his season. And it's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's a funny world that almost, I think now we're at a point where elites feel obliged to do this, and they have to get content out if they're going to be competitive, if they're going to get that competitive contract. And I think that's a real shame. I don't think it's their job to be doing that. They've got enough to focus on as well as athletes and to get to that high level. And you know, we're seeing that really well with, I think, what M11 doing, I think, is almost like that's the gold standard model, right? They're showcasing themselves. I think they're constantly just dropping out teasers of, you know, and it's almost like everything they push out is almost an advert of their lifestyle.
Do you know why? And it's similar to like our traditional, our big team sports, right? In football, the club is in charge of promoting their players and using their players as assets in that sense. Whereas if you're not part of M11 or you're not part of an American university or you're not part of On or whoever it is, right? It's on you to do it. There's no one there promoting you. And I think it always goes back to the brands need to create some sort of team, club system, whatever it is. And that is how we're going to promote athletes and get people to really follow the sport, be fans of certain brands or clubs and things like that. And I know they tried it a bit with Grand Slam. We'll see if that ever kind of resurfaces, but
no.
No, I don't think so. But it is the model in a way. I don't think the meets as they were, but in terms of having these groups around, it makes it so much easier to follow when they are teams and when they're being promoted by a separate entity rather than relying on the athletes themselves to make the content, when ultimately, like you say, it's their job to train and it's their job to get themselves in good shape, perform well at races.
Yeah, I just think our sport is just so cutthroat. It's just so difficult. I mean, something we haven't even discussed is the US champs. I mean, Cole Hocker, Jared Naguse don't even make the podium in the 1500 at the US champs. You know, they had a great race. Nico Young, Cole Hocker, Jared Naguse. I mean, there was a couple hundredth of a second between them all. I mean, it was a brilliant race in the 3000, but the 1500, they don't even make the podium. And it's like, you know, you've got someone who looks at his he's just run 3:45 for a mile, like just looks at his absolute best. And I think this is where, you know, when we look at someone like Jakob probably wouldn't have let that happen. But the depth of the US is just,
what I'd say,
off the charts.
Yeah.
And
me and you always talk about how much we love that US system in that it is so cutthroat, right? And there's critics that say, yeah, but the athletes miss out. Sometimes they don't send their best team. But you know what I'd say? Like, that's what it's not the first time that's happened to Cole Hocker. And that is why when it matters, he gets it right.
Yeah, he does.
Actually experiences these mistakes.
He does.
British athletes never have that issue. Because apart from the world champs or the Olympics, every 2 years, that's the only time they have a real opportunity where there's even a chance they might fail, because they know they're on a team and everything's so like set up for them that they never have to experience getting it wrong. And so then they're just basically guessing that they're going to get it right every 2 years when they actually have to, because British champs doesn't matter. They make the team regardless. And the standard's not just there. Not everyone has to turn up. So you know your competition's not that good. It's bonkers, really.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron, but I think that's my point of this whole conversation is that event, you know, Cole Hocker, Jared Naguse, they're missing out on the podium at the US champs in the 1500. They did double back after the 3000, but still, that is a massive storyline and a massive upset. But for me, I don't know if it's because we were celebrating my 30th, mate, but I don't know how many people who even watched that race. Obviously, you can't watch it live. Yeah. It's, you know, it's in the States, but how many people have watched that back? How many people have consumed that? Very little, I imagine, on our side of the world. And, you know, again, I guess we got other things to focus on, but they are big players. And those narratives, those storylines, I think that should be the content, not all of this influencer garbage that we have to consume.
Yeah. We don't have to consume it.
We don't have to consume it. You don't consume it, mate.
No, I don't. I'm not on social media.
Well, I would say I don't consume it either, but I think it's where the money is. It's
hard though. Do you know what? Since I've not been on Instagram, right, it's a lot harder I have to go and look for results and like look things up rather than just naturally getting them through. Which does make it, Katie, obviously, she'll tell me sometimes, she'll be like, oh, did you see this? And I'll be like, better go read up on that one then. Yeah, but it's a strange one. But then, like you say, you don't have to sift through the garbage. It doesn't ever cross my timeline, if you like.
Exactly. So We will. Let's dive into this one with Lewis Collins and Tom Folan, Big Dog Media guys that look after Jakob Ingebrigtsen. It is a fascinating story, and it is probably an indication of where the world of track and field is going to go, and where content creation is going to go as well. Their plans to operate Jakob's YouTube channel and his sort of social media entities is very interesting. So enjoy this one, and we'll catch you after. Well, look, welcome everybody. And today's debate is going to be largely focused on competition versus content. And in our sport, is it at a crossroads where content is now being rewarded more than competition itself? And we have two stellar guests on to introduce this topic and open up the debate. But firstly, Lewis Collins and Tom Folan, do you guys want to introduce yourselves and currently what you are doing in the sport? Because it is quite amazing.
Yeah, why not? You take it away, Lewis. You kickstart things with a Big Dog origin story.
I'm Lewis, founder of Big Dog Film Productions. It's been going for about 10 years in the background, but officially been rolling since last April. Me and Tom work with a lot of brands and athletes in predominantly the running space. And our main client is Jakob Ingebrigtsen, and we are there to tell his story and, shift the narrative for him. And I feel like we've done a very good job with that over the last year across all of his social channels, from Instagram to YouTube, and building his profile there. And yeah, we work along with other brands like Nike, Adidas, Puma, doing creative campaigns and other storytelling pieces with them. I am the main videographer, but we also lean on a lot of talent, and outsource a lot of our talent from a freelance pool. Tom is our photographer, producer, and creative director, and he will give a little spiel about himself.
You didn't even mention that you run 47.7 for 400, Lewis. But I can't believe you haven't slipped that in there.
Yeah, I have, yeah. Yeah, I've competed at British level for athletics. So me and Tom, the reason why we feel that Big Dog does so well in this space is because we've both got our hands and toes and whatever else, feet in the water all the time. I'm still training now at like 32 and competing with some amazing athletes. I've raced Matt Hudson-Smith, which is the Olympic silver medalist. So yeah, I've had a good run, but now I'm just enjoying the sport and managing to tell other athletes stories along the way now. And that's the next chapter for myself.
Yeah. Well said. I think ultimately the dream for us was always, everybody wants to go to the Olympics, everybody wants to be a world champion, but the next best thing is for us to be able to go to these events. We were lucky enough to be in Budapest and Tokyo, and to be at those events in some capacity, even if it isn't actively competing there ourselves, obviously. It's a nice, almost little full circle moment of we got there, but just in a roundabout kind of way, I suppose.
Yeah. Boys, yeah. I mean, you struck gold, really. You're working with probably the biggest athlete in the sport. How did that come about?
Great question. So myself and Lewis both used to work for ProDirect previously, retailer in the UK, arch nemesis of sports shoes, the sponsor of this podcast, but we won't mention that. That's fine.
We'll blur them out.
Yeah. But initially we were hired in to do a job for Nike for ProDirect for the launch of some new spikes. And Nike wanted Jakob Ingebrigtsen to be the face of those spikes. It was the Victory 2, the Dragonfly Elite, and the Dragonfly 2. And so we went over there, we shot some global assets, just stills and some videos of Jakob in the spikes. But then as almost a passion project on the side, we really wanted to do a longer form documentary of Jakob as well that kind of told his story in a little bit more detail. And it sounds silly, I suppose, but I guess we just kind of got on relatively well. Like we were able to communicate with him on a level, whereas I think a lot of the film crews that he's had in his face pretty much his entire life aren't necessarily there to document him, his journey in the sport in a true authentic way, and are more there to manufacture drama and see what kind of angles they can get. Can they get him and Elizabeth arguing about some IKEA furniture that she's bought? And, whereas we were entirely there to speak to him. Like for me, it was just a joy. And I was shitting myself the first day that we done an interview with him. But it was, it was
No, I was actually very calm, but the whole team were shitting themselves when he come rolling through in his bright yellow Mercedes AMG. Yeah, Tom was there shaking, literally, physically shaking.
Yeah. Yeah, you could hear him before you could see him, put it that way, coming up the driveway. But yeah, from that, Lewis did an edit, like a what we'd call a director's cut, I suppose, of some of the footage that we didn't use in that documentary. And from there, reached out directly and just asked if we wanted to, tell their story in a more formal capacity. And then here we are today, nearly a year later from that moment. So yeah, it's been amazing. Obviously, anybody who's a fan of the sport is also a fan of Jakob. You can perhaps not agree with everything that he says in post-race media zones and everything, but generally speaking, you can't be a fan of the sport and not at least appreciate what Jakob's done for the sport.
No, you guys have done a great job there as well. I mean, obviously he has a huge following, but I was checking, he's up to over 100k subscribers on YouTube, which is a success on your part. Do you have KPIs?
We have them. Yeah. We have them to the number. And Tom, tell them.
But I would say the KPIs are our own that we want to achieve with Jakob. Yeah. It's not like he's not there with a whip being like, guys, if I don't get to 100k before the end of the year, this is over. It's a lot more fluid than that, and mainly based off what we want to achieve with the content that we put out there.
But we made a good start. I mean, he was on, what was it, Tom? 32,000?
Yeah, about 30k subs on YouTube to begin with. So it's a good little jump.
Very good.
But
jump.
It's, say it's easy work. Obviously, there's hard parts about it, but generally speaking, making content about someone who everybody wants to see more content about, it sort of writes itself to a certain extent. It's just learning how to pivot and, when things aren't going that great with injury setbacks and whatnot, how to approach that situation sensitively, but while still finding out the information that the fans want to know, I guess, which is easy because we're both fans of the sport first and foremost anyway.
Yeah. You've done a good job, especially in that latest interview, if you like, video with Jakob when he obviously announces his injury and the impact of it. But let's focus more on the content then and the way the sport is at the moment and the lie of the landscape. But are athletes under pressure to share their journey in 2026? Do you feel like Jakob was, obviously you sort of befriended him, met him, and then the relationship blossomed, but we see all the top stars doing it now. And do you think you're at a disadvantage if you haven't got content?
Yes. But as a simple answer, I think one of the biggest things that myself and Lewis are trying to navigate and I guess achieve at Big Dog as a production company, if you like, is filling in the gaps for the athletes. Like, we don't think that an athlete trying to perform at the highest level should also be a content creator. Like, you shouldn't be doing, your 400s on the track and thinking in between each rep, I need to tell people like that was in 62 seconds. It shouldn't be the responsibility of the athlete to tell their story. It should be, in our opinion, ideally the brands that are supporting those athletes' responsibility to get behind them, put some marketing budget behind them. And if they believe in those athletes enough to have signed them onto a deal, then they should also believe in them enough to put their money where their mouth is and tell their story or employ people like us to tell their story. So, yeah, I think you definitely are at a disadvantage if you're not producing content. But on the flip side, also don't think it should be the responsibility of the athletes to do that themselves.
That's a fair comment. I mean, what is the incentive for the athlete, though? Of course, there's exposure, but someone like Jakob already has loads of exposure. He has loads of brands and partners knocking on his door already. What was his incentive to get this off the ground? The way I look at it, he probably has quite a lot to lose as well as gain from this.
I think he doesn't get any gain from it. I think it's more of for him to look back on, as in like the document,
his journey,
like telling his story and the journey along to see how far he can go towards LA 28. And obviously he has had the backing from Nike, so they see value in it. But I'd say if you strip it back to, say, national standard athletes, I feel, because that's the other end of the spectrum, I feel maybe it is their responsibility to maybe ask the question to their sponsors and say, are they able to, unlock some marketing budget per year to tell their story, which secondhand is product placement for the brands anyway. That's the way that they could get a financial gain from it, these athletes, to try and get some local content creators to come and film track sessions, because like Tom says, these athletes, half the time, they're going to be on the floor with like floods of lactic. Like, they're not going to go whipping out a camera and putting it on selfie mode and trying to explain to the camera what their session is. So yeah, I think maybe athletes, if they could try and see the financial gain that they would get by making themselves more appealing to their new brands or their sponsors. That's the way I'd see it.
Well, is this a world where we then see elite competing against non-elite influencers, rumfluencers, whatever you want to call them? Because they're then going to start competing for the same budget. And then who does a brand want to invest in? Do they want to invest in their sort of star, their performance angle, or do they want to invest in the views and the clicks? And this is where I think the sport is starting to hit a crossroads, coupled with the fact rumfluencers are actually getting quite good now. They're still miles off elite, but their performances are improving, and to the general public, they are becoming very impressive. You know, they consider them as elite, I'm sure.
What a horrible word, by the way, rumfluencer. But we get
it's 2026. It's probably the most said word in through the month of January, right?
But you are right. I think it's not necessarily a problem, but the stage we're at is the fact that there are lots of these people that are making a living from creating content related to running that are at a level which is unattainable for the average person. If you've got running influencers, male or female, who are running, you know, venturing into sub-elite times, then that is unrelatable for the majority of people, to the point where they would see them as being elite runners, even though in our world, like you say, they're still probably a couple minutes off in the 5K even, let alone the longer distances. But it's dead simple from an economic standpoint. When you look at it, it's return on investment for the brands. And if they're getting an influencer who's got 250k followers and every single one of their reels goes mental and gets 1 million views, that is way more valuable to a brand than, you know, the best athlete in the UK who just running a PB over 200 meters, for example, you know, with 5,000 followers on Instagram. Like it's just not remotely comparable, I don't think, in terms of short-term gratification for brands. And that's the problem, I suppose. The ideal scenario is both, where you've got like a Keely Hodgkinson or an Amy Hunt who are great on socials, but they're also at the very top of their game. But that's so few and far between. I don't think we can rely on that as a sustainable model for other athletes to follow, because it means you have to be an Olympic champion or a world medalist to even qualify to then create content that's going to organically do well as an athlete, if that makes sense. So it's, yeah, like you say, it is a real crossroads, and it's an interesting one to talk about, because you've already seen athletes, you know, Philly Bowden's a great example, who was up until quite recently sponsored by On as a professional athlete, but there was also a content creation part of that into her contract. Obviously, I don't know the specifics, but that's what she's spoken about openly. And I think that's very forward thinking from an On perspective, but it also raises questions, right, about what the brands are looking for. And it's not just performance anymore, by the sounds of it.
A stressful time to be an athlete. Yeah, you have to consider obviously the performance angle, but then now you're having to consider how you present yourself on social media, on YouTube, how many followers you have. And are you guys worried about a world where potentially, you know, with clients you work with, athletes you work with, that actually YouTube, social media can turn into a negative, right? I feel like fans, well, people in general, we're quite fickle, especially when it comes to sport. Like, we have heroes. When they start succeeding too much, like Djokovic, prime example, right? Everyone sort of hates him when he's winning all the time. And now he's nearing the end of his career and we can see he's going to leave. We're like, oh, let's celebrate the greatest tennis player of all time. And, it's very apparent in distance running as well. And I just wonder about the stress that is going to be added to these athletes as they open themselves up on these platforms.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's difficult because you've got teams like Macau, for example, who are, I think we know those guys fairly well. I think Charlie does a great job at documenting the stuff that they get up to, and they're a great bunch. You know, from top to bottom, you won't find a bad egg in that team. But you know, if you frequent the Let's Run forums, you will see that they are regularly getting thrown under the bus for underperforming, and how dare they be, you know, professional athletes if they have one bad race, or Rory has a rough time at World Cross, for example, and all of a sudden the fact that they put themselves out there is a negative because they come under so much more scrutiny as a result of it. So like you say, it's an interesting one. You're expected to put yourself out there, and if you're not putting yourself out there, people ask why. But then when you do put yourself out there, you open yourself up to so much more critics, which, I mean, it's fair enough, I suppose. It's part and parcel and it comes with it. But yeah, it's like you say, it's a very interesting time and a very stressful time for those athletes, I think, trying to decide what to do and how much they should share of their training. Because that's the other angle, right? There's a lot of athletes that don't want to share too much. Obviously, there's nothing new in this day and age. There's no secret session that's going to, automatically guarantee a world record. But there's definitely details and ways about doing things that athletes do want to keep a little bit more private. So you kind of have to share enough to get people interested, but not too much that you then feel like that you're putting yourself at a disadvantage when you are on the start line.
Definitely. And another topic I just want to touch on as well is live sport, and how much live sport are we consuming? How much live sport do you guys consume? I feel like now a lot of people are just relying on race highlights on YouTube to watch and follow this sport, and then they hear it from the athlete first in their latest podcast or their latest YouTube channel. Do you worry about the edge being taken off the sharp end of the sport? You guys do a great job at actually driving the narrative. So is there a world where content can actually support competition? But I'm just thinking from a brand perspective, where are they more willing to sort of hand over some money? Is it content or is it competition?
Tom, got any ideas? I personally watch a lot of race highlights on reels. Like me and Tom, when we're on our way on work trips and we can't watch everything live, it's always the next morning that we're going to see race results. Femke Bol had no idea where that live stream was, so I watched that the next day with Tom. And then Diamond League races are probably throughout the summer. They're the most easily watchable for me. That's just personally, like, they're on every single week and it's just easy to dive into. I just pray that the Commonwealths and the Europeans are going to be just as easy to watch this summer. Otherwise, they've really dropped the ball there.
Yeah. It's funny. I see it firsthand. Like, often have relatively awkward conversations on the school run with parents who ask, "Oh, what do you do for work? Where have you just come back from?" And you're trying to explain it. And the chances of, I think there's been one parent who knew what a Diamond League was, like they'd seen a Diamond League, and everybody else, literally, even names like Jakob and Keely, they go straight over their head unless it's Mo Farah or Paula Radcliffe. Honestly, they've got zero idea about athletics at the pointy end, which is what we're obviously talking about and most passionate about. And that's scary for sure, because, this sport doesn't sustain itself if the only people that are watching it live are the people that are already obsessed with it, because they're going to watch it anyway. Your Mark Hookways who are doing YouTube previews of every single race that's ever going to happen in the UK. Like those people are unicorns. They're few and far between, and they're amazing members of this community, but there's not that many of them. So if the general public aren't even in tune with what, a Diamond League is as our pinnacle kind of race series throughout the summer, it's, it is a scary place, I think, because you can guarantee they know what the Champions League is or the PGA Tour, even if they've never actually watched any of those events properly. So yeah, I still try and tune in, but the only way that I'm able to do it consistently is if it's like a World Athletics Gold Meet and there's a live stream on the YouTube, for example. Because if it's a major marathon, you're going, I don't know about you, but I'm searching where to watch Boston Marathon in the UK, and it's like, oh, you need a membership with this service, or sign up to NBC, and then I'm using a VPN to be able to, there's so many steps to go through just to watch some pretty bang average coverage of a race, but they might cut to cheerleading for most of it instead of the elite race, that it's, it is a difficult sport to be a fan of sometimes. Whereas Instagram, you can go on there and the world and his dog are sharing, the run that they've just done or the race that they're doing and all of that sort of stuff. And it's just so much more accessible.
Boys, it's been brilliant. I mean, I guess you are driving narrative, you're driving those storylines towards live sport, you're pushing people to go and watch our sport, pardon me. So we appreciate you doing that. Would you ever think about sort of, Tom, producer, getting in live sport? How can you break into the market? Do you think even a Diamond League, the way that format is, the way it's displayed to us at home on TV, do you think that needs changes? Any ideas there around the production of our sport, major marathons, Diamond Leagues, world champs, etc.?
It is a really difficult one, because I think rivalries make sport, and 9 times out of 10 you'll see athletes almost dumb down the rivalries and claim that they're, it's just been, even Jakob and Josh Kerr, I don't think there's really any animosity or rivalry there at all, but it's just something that was picked up and ran with. I can tell you, Jakob can give a monkeys about any of that. Honestly, it's not something that drives him. Whereas other sports, rivalry is pretty much the sole reason you're interested in watching like a Merseyside derby or a London derby, is because of the history and because of the fact that those teams and the fans generally don't like each other that much. And in running, like it's, everybody's hugging and everything after the race, which is great, but it doesn't necessarily lean into a narrative of pitching people against each other. And, you've got a real like grudge match here between Jess Hull and Faith Kipyegon. They'd probably rather go out for coffee and cake than they would, like duel over a race.
True.
And it's that's where I think it's probably one of the best things about the sport. But my God, it makes it difficult to spin a narrative and to really do like any promo edits before races and that kind of thing when everybody's just pretty much happy to be there.
I can't. Yeah,
I
you're dead
agree.
right. It's hard to try and give you an answer as to how to change the production of like live TV because, I mean, like Tom says,
I think.
Do they come out to entry music like they did at the World Champs? Is that a spin-off when Fred Curley would come out and they have their own like 30-second segment where they come down halfway down the track for the 100 metres? Is that a good idea? Maybe, yes. It provides a bit more entertainment. I think that's what the sports need, entertainment. Last year, Bislett, between Mondo Duplantis and Carson Warholm, I think Red Bull sponsored that, Tom, didn't they? For me personally, I actually quite like that. I thought it was good. 2 athletes from different disciplines coming against each other. That was a good idea. If they could start to do things like that, they was going to do Sydney versus, who was they going to do? Was it Femke or something like that? I can't remember. But
Keely, or was it Sydney Keely?
Something like that. Yeah. Just one-off random races. It's quite funny. When we were with Jakob, sometimes me and him talk about what is the middle distance between like me and him. And we've whittled it down. It could be like a YouTube skit, like cameraman versus Jakob.
Yeah.
What's the distance? I've already said I could have him over 500. So yeah, it's little things like that. But I think we've got it down.
The difficulty is, I think, as soon as you start throwing these spin-offs into it, it becomes like YouTuber boxing, where it's like people are watching AJ and Jake Paul not because they're fans of boxing, but probably because they either want to see like Jake Paul get knocked out or get his jaw smashed to pieces, which thankfully did happen, or they're looking for, Jake Paul to upset everybody and it'd be this massive spectacle. But it's not boxing in its purest form, right? It's not the best fighting the best. And in running, ultimately what we want to see is the best people race the best people. And that does generally happen on the Diamond League circuit. And the Diamond League is amazing. Yeah. Like, I tune in for that, and it's a fantastic evening of entertainment, but there's got to be a middle ground, because you can't just have like loads of these wacky spin-off races of choosing like the superstars from each discipline to go against each other.
No,
because then you're creating fans of that spectacle who are then probably not gonna go on and watch everything else. They're just gonna keep wanting to see these freak show Frankenstein events, which isn't integral to the sport. It doesn't, it's not what the sport's built on. And so you got that issue as well, where it's a very, as you'll know from your commentary and everything else, like it's a sport which is run to the book with officiating, and try and set up a track meet. The amount of hoops that you have to jump through is absolutely mental. Just to have a pretty local domestic grassroots track race is not easy with all the regulations. So that's an issue, but it's also the reason, it's one of the things that we have to keep going down, because otherwise you end up with just a free-for-all of events that aren't actually necessarily true to running, right?
Yeah. I mean, people will not Grand Slam, but I think they were onto something with the just introducing the athletes. Not all this razzmatazz. They don't need to come out to, fighting music and have a big light show, but the fact that they would storytell a little bit prior to a race. So instead of just panning through athletes on a start line, they would actually say, this is Josh Kerr, this is his background, he's the Olympic, he's the world champion. And I think you need to pick out one or two, and they need to have VTs before a race, because that's what grips. I never knew who Tadej Pogačar was, until you watch Tour de France, and then they give this great backstory to Tadej Pogačar, and you're like, right, this guy's legit. So I want to see him go win. Whereas in our sport, they don't really do that. They just pan on across him on the start line, and that's a small change, which I think is very easy for them to do from a production standpoint.
That would 100%. Yeah. Athlos did a good job of that. The female event in New York, I think they did a really good job. with the content around that, and actually pedestaling the women that were taking part and introducing them properly. I think they did a good job of that for sure. But again, it's an event which isn't necessarily like it's like an additional fixture. I don't want to call it an exhibition because that's not what it is. But you know what I mean? It's not part of our sport in the same way as a Diamond League type event would be.
We've got British indoors this weekend. Matt, what would you do differently? Because it's not going to be a packed out. It's not going to be a packed out stadium as it is every single year. How would you want to see that differently?
Well, for one, I think athletes need to be locked down. I was just actually, before you recorded with you guys, I was looking at the entries and trying to see who's accepted, who's invited. They're not confirmed. Mm-hmm. How can you build a matchup? Well, it's Tuesday. How can you build a matchup for a Saturday British Champs if you don't even know who's doing it yet? So entries need to be confirmed 2 weeks out. Of course, you're going to have dropouts, but you need to lock them in as quick as possible. Typically, British athletics have relied on stars to sell tickets. They've relied on being like, come and watch Keely, come and watch Short, like Mo Farah used to be a classic, right? He would sell stadiums wherever he went for British athletics. And so they need to lean into that as well. And I think it's the storytelling pre-race for me, which needs to improve in our sport. And it's its own worst enemy because there's so many events on. I mean, this weekend, British Champs might be overshadowed by Seville, Barcelona half. It might be overshadowed by, Bucks is the same weekend. Our sport's its own worst enemy. Like, how the hell are you going to consume all of that in one weekend? It's impossible. And so they need to sort the fixtures out, but then also there needs to be improved storytelling prior. Like, our most listened to podcast is usually, outside of a guest, is usually like a Liverpool preview. And that's probably only because we're not competing against anyone else previewing Liverpool, right? And it's like, who is racing? What do the guys think is going to happen? And it's the same with British Champs. I mean, we're going to make a go of it and preview it. But where else are you seeing a British Champs preview?
Yeah, exactly. You're dead right. I think just the last thing is, like you say, the storytelling around the content, around the sport rather, is you go on Netflix and you see Tour de France Unchained, you see Full Swing for Golf, you see Drive to Survive. Like, all of these series did a really fantastic job at driving viewership. Tour de France Unchained for Tour de France, the race itself, did you see they had really good highlights after every single stage, a couple of hours after the race had finished, and things like that made fans of the sport who weren't previously fans of the sport, for the UFC even, they do a vlog series in the build up to every main numbered card event, where every day in fight week there's a vlog where it will go and see the athletes training, cutting weight, play a golf driving range, just chilling out with their training partners and stuff. Before, we don't get anything like that. And I know there was Sprint on Netflix, which, being brutal, I don't think it hit the mark. I think it came across as pretty cheesy, to be honest, and very manufactured, and it didn't necessarily do the best job at storytelling, and it was obviously only focused on sprinters rather than the sport as a whole. But yeah, I think that obviously takes investment, but that would be so interesting to see in the build up to a British Champs, like indoors this weekend. If there was just a small series on each of the key athletes that were competing. But like you say, that's difficult when you don't even know who those athletes are and we're, 5 days out, however long it is. It's a conundrum, but that would definitely help.
You're right. It all comes down to investments at the end of the day. And, look at Grand Slam, fine example. You could do a lot when you've got money, but if you haven't, it's tough. Boys, it's been a pleasure. We've set the debate up nicely. We're time to hear for a few listeners, but thank you very much for coming on, and best of luck. We're documenting the best distance runners season to date. It might be a challenging one. I hope he gets back from injury quick.
Yeah, time will tell. Yeah, cheers, Matt.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, great to hear from Lewis Collins and Tom Folan there from Big Dog Media. Fascinating insight they get into Jakob. What I'd love to know is all like the intricacies they have from Jakob that they don't share, can't share, choose not to share, however way you put it. But yeah, must be a pretty cool job to get to spend so much time with that guy and see how he operates.
They've got a great job, and credit to them. They do a fantastic production as well. Like that is high quality content that you would expect of, high budget organizations. Maybe they are high budget organization. Maybe Jakob pays them well, but you can even see the sort of, with that video that Jakob put out around that injury, the sort of struggles that they're going to have in telling that narrative whilst, they still want to protect him at the same time. And I think that's what's so difficult because, all our storylines are focused on individuals really. And I think you come back to it with the team element. There's probably the way to approach content is that team size. You get different characters in. Team Macau do a good job there. But whereas I think when you've just got that individual, you do just open yourself up and, you have to protect yourself as well as a human being. And I think that's going to be difficult because I do think, the world we live in, and it's always been that way from front pages on the newspapers, from magazines to gossip columns. Like people love drama, people love reality. 9 times out of 10, the more access people give in a content space, the more engagement they're going to get, whether it's good or bad engagement. And, at the end of the day, those numbers are what I think it's such a difficult space at the moment because those numbers are driving contracts, to driving earnings. And so this is why I say athletes feel obliged to sort of buy into this stuff and to do it, even if they're not that sort of character. They're being persuaded, they're being encouraged to get out there, put themselves out there.
You can't really blame the brands though, can you? Because they think about it as
there's money,
as a return on their investment.
What do you think? I mean, Lewis and Tom say that, brands should start setting aside money to market athletes. And, personally, they obviously spend money already, large amounts on marketing. And will the brands ever value that as much as, what they currently do?
Yeah.
And then there's less budgets to go around. I think it's.
I mean, they're paying the athlete to market them. That's the whole.
Yeah.
That's why they give them kit and pay them. That's the athlete's job is to market the brand or to showcase the brand in their day-to-day life. So there is a difference. Like it's not that it's on the athletes I'm not saying they all need to film everything they do. But it's the brands are paying the athletes to showcase that they are wearing Nike, whoever.
Already.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that is a fair comment. It'd be a good thing, right? It would be a good thing if they marketed athletes.
But you get travel budget, and then here's your sort of social media marketing budget as well. Like, go take it away. Go get a local.
But then they'd have to sponsor less athletes, right? And we're always saying how hard it is anyway to get.
Well, and then it actually, but for the athlete, that then becomes a KPI of their contract. Like they've got, not only have they got to hit bonuses, they're now being paid to also drive their own following and their own narrative.
So then they're assessed on that as well. So that's the issue. Because if in your contract they say, we're giving you budget for social media. If you then don't do well on social media and don't have many followers, don't have many views, you could probably lose your contract because your Instagram's not very good rather than because you've not run very well. So then that's a additional stress, additional issue.
Agreed. But elites are doing it pretty well. They all have one. Josh Kerr, Whiteman, recent, but then again, Nadir doesn't have one. He comes up and wins the world champs. I do feel like there is an element of when these athletes become too familiar. I said it before when the Worlds was on, they lose their aura for me. Cole Hocker is somehow managing it, but I do feel like
Cole Hocker just gives off the aura in the vids. I think
he does, mate. He's just a don. He's the best.
You just can see how locked in.
He's unfazed. He backs his system so much. He just knows what he does is going to make him the best.
My favourite one's when he's just like, I think he's just foam rolling and watching Hisham, and they just film him doing that.
He must be going back.
Yeah,
but also I think maybe Hocker is of that slightly different generation. Maybe that he's maybe able.
He's pretty old school, isn't he?
Cope with it a little bit more.
How old is he even now? Hocker's still young, isn't he?
Is he 24, 25? I think. But mate, there you go. For me, Cole made an interesting point about, those live broadcasts. A lot of them are free. So who are we to sort of bash those broadcasts and those productions? They are, 9 times out of 10, it's always free. Fair play. Sometimes these streams aren't as good as they can be, but this is where I feel like we grab new audiences, not in the content game, but in the live productions. Like I'm adamant that makes a huge difference. You see something, you watch the Olympics, basically the snow sports, the ice sports get a bit tedious, but the snow sports, and I know you are watching spectacular moments. It is the Olympic Games, but Production's amazing. Every other sport nails their live production. Like, that is the number one focus. Everything else is secondary. The live production, that's where you're driving people. And I would love to see that taken a lot more seriously in our sport versus, these content spaces. Yes, there's high productions on YouTube, but what's a high production worth when you can't even see that athlete that you've been following on YouTube for the last 6 months in the actual race itself? And that's what happens. How much of how much of Sessman are we going to see in London? Maybe 10 minutes worth of coverage. And I'm not saying the cameras need to focus on Sessman, but I'm just saying it's difficult. There is an audience there, but they're not able to make that jump because the live production for me is just not strong enough. That's my take.
There you go. We'll end with that one. Obviously, Bath Half coming up. There's a host of athletes bidding for their space in the World Half Marathon Champs. Not too much we can talk about, though, obviously, in terms of who's going to take it. Very unknown, if you like, in terms of people's form and stuff like that. Jake Smith, obviously, in there. He's someone that has raced a fair bit and going well. Joe Wigfield as well. But we'll see, mate. It'll be good to wrap up that race next week and talk about who's going to be representing GB over in the World Half.
We will indeed. We'll be previewing the World Indoors as well. It's a busy weekend the following week.
Absolutely right. Thanks very much for listening to us. We'll catch you guys very, very soon.